So I said that we were going to talk about allergens in the next video, and that is what this video is, all about allergens. And I decided to do that. This is actually something covered in chapter 3, but I wanted to cover it actually because there's a really serious thing that recently happened with my wife, and I wanted to kind of give that a little bit of that story and a little bit of what happened with that. So I talked about biological, physical, and chemical contaminations in other videos, but there is a fourth type of contamination that is extremely important that not as many people think about unless they are subjected to this kind of contamination. That's allergens. So within allergens, there's actually what we will call the big 8. I'll put them up on the screen right now so you can see what they all are. So as you can see, the big 8 are nuts, tree nuts, shellfish, fish, dairy, egg, wheat, and soy. Those are the big 8. Usually those are the ones most people are trained on. Those are the ones to be most conscious about. And soy is in literally like everything. But beyond that, people can be allergic to a wide range of things. And a lot of times it's some kind of protein that is contained within this thing that makes it a problem. There are people that are actually allergic to meat, actual meat. And it's because of this little jerk right here. That's the Lone Star tick. You get infected with I don't know what it's called, but you get infected with something and it creates a thing called the alpha-gal allergy. Alpha-gal is in a lot of meat. I believe it's in some other products too. I believe it might even be in things like nail polish and stuff like that. So it's really devastating if you get hit by this, especially if you love steak. There are other allergens too. There's red dye allergens. There's people that are allergic to strawberries. There's people that are allergic to mangoes. My wife, and this is why I wanted to talk about this, my wife, we found out, is allergic to mustard seed. And you would think, oh, that's easy. Just don't put mustard on your hot dog, right? Well, it's more complicated than that because a lot of companies will put mustard in things that normally don't have mustard. When I do taco seasoning, for example, I don't put any dry mustard powder in my taco seasoning. It's, you know, the basic stuff like cumin, paprika, salt, pepper, blah, blah, blah. Cajun seasoning is another one. It's got cayenne pepper and stuff like that in it and no mustard in it. But you get prepackaged Cajun seasoning. Guess what they put in there? Mustard. There's been Indian food that has dry mustard powder in it. It is everywhere. Like when you realize, basically, if you go to the grocery store sometime, do me a favor, go to the grocery store sometime and go up to any product that you can think of, look on the back. And if the back just says spices, she can't have that because there is a chance that just that word spices means mustard. And unlike the big 8, mustard isn't required to be put on the allergens. Some people do it, some people don't, but it's not required. The big 8, it is. That's why you notice anytime that you look on the back of these labels, you'll see things that it'll say contain wheat or made in a factory that also produces peanut products or something like that. Whenever you are cooking, you have to be mindful of this kind of thing. And it's different when people come in with a tomato allergy or this out. Let me know if you're allergic to something in the comments below. Like, what are you allergic to? I'm apparently allergic to heat. I'll talk about that some other time. When you go in, this is actually why cooks get so frustrated when a customer will come in and say that they have a tomato allergy just so tomatoes don't get put on their hamburger. And the reason why is because the process is different. If somebody makes a cheeseburger, for example, accidentally puts a tomato slice on there, they can just remove that. Maybe they remove the lettuce because it has a little bit of tomato juice on it. They put new ones on. That's it. Maybe they replace the bun if the bun got some tomato on it. And no big deal, right? Well, you can't do that if somebody has a tomato allergen. That has to be made completely separately. You have to clean everything. That burger will have to be made completely differently. The grill will have to be cleaned because you don't know if maybe you made a quesadilla and there was some tomato that got left on there as a result. The cutting board probably has some kind of tomato on it. Can't make it there. Yeah, make sure you change your gloves, even if you normally wouldn't need to change your gloves. You got to clean everything, sanitize everything. The bun can't touch anything with tomatoes. You put the tomato on there on accident, you take it off, you might actually still kill somebody. Essentially, you can have all kinds of reactions to this stuff. And one of the problems that we run into is a lot of times it's hard to identify because the symptoms show up. My wife, for example, she might get something like Raisin Cane's and might get a little bit of a stomach ache is how it would start. And she would just think like, okay, well, sometimes when I eat chicken, I guess my stomach gets upset. I don't really understand. And she would have all kinds of digestive issues. I'll leave it at that. Now, the thing about allergens is whenever there are problems with something that you've eaten, allergens ramp up over time. So at first, when she would eat mustard seed and we didn't know what it was, she would just think it was, sometimes she can't have certain types of chicken, maybe fried chicken versus grilled chicken or whatever. But over time, that light nausea and a little bit of abdominal pain got a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse until one day she actually broke out full on in hives because of dressing. Because I think it was either Thousand Island Caesar. I think it was a Caesar salad she had, and that has Dijon mustard in it. So she had that and she had a full breakout. She got super hot, broke out in hives, got super itchy, like almost like uncontrollably itchy. And it was really bad. And we were like, what the hell? And that had been a pattern starting to emerge that we noticed. And so we went through and dug through and we were like, well, what is it? Like, you're obviously allergic to something, but we just don't know what. And it can't be the chicken. It's not the lettuce, because you had XYZ. It turned out it was the mustard because we started thinking back to every single time she's had a breakout and mustard was involved somehow. My wife, do not do this. I told her not to do this. I didn't want her to do this. Do not do this. Ever, ever, ever. And I'm being specific because she did something you were never supposed to do. She got curious if that was the thing, and so she intentionally tried some. And I had never been more scared in my life because of that. And she did break out. She's fine, by the way. But she got hives, itchy, everything like that. I made her take some Zyrtec because Zyrtec, Benadryl, all that stuff actually works really well for that kind of thing. To a degree, not medical advice. If you have any type of allergy or you suspect allergies, go to an allergist, go to a doctor, tell them, hey, I suspect I have an allergy. This is what happened. And then set up a meeting and have the doctor do whatever they think they need to do. There's some new nasal sprays, so you don't need to inject yourself. Maybe they might say that you need to carry an EpiPen around with you at all times, that kind of stuff. But that story out of the way, what are the symptoms of allergens? So I mentioned nausea before. You might have some wheezing or shortness of breath. You might get hives or have itchy skin, and you can't really, it's different kind of itchy. And a lot of times it's over your entire body, and it's really horrible. You might have swelling of different parts of your body, including your face. You could end up having vomiting and diarrhea, abdominal pain, and itchy throat. Now, like I said, it's hard talking about this and saying what you should look for, what you should do and don't do, because allergen symptoms show up differently for everybody. But I can only tell you my personal experience and what we have determined is the deciding factor on whether or not to take her to the hospital. And so I'm not applying this to anybody else. I got to be really careful about this because that's really important for medical stuff. It could present completely differently and still result in anaphylaxis. So just take this as just my own experience and not what you should do or look for. But what we realized is if it gets serious, it will be tingly lips and itchy or tingly lips and itchy or tingly throat. Not in conjunction with each other, but a lot of times it'll start on the lips. They'll almost go numb, and then there'll be some itchiness and tingling. And then it'll feel like it's actually moving from your mouth down into your throat. And that is dangerous. That is like extremely, if it is doing that, like hives, everything else is still a big deal. Definitely see a doctor, call 911, anything like that, because it is still serious. But I'm just saying that is like, we realized is the red flag of like emergency room, because that's anaphylaxis, and you could go into anaphylactic shock and you could swell to the point where your airways close and you are no longer with us. That right there, that seriousness is why we get so upset as cooks when people pretend to have an allergy when they go to a restaurant, because we are now worried about you dropping your loot in the restaurant, if you know what I'm saying. So I told you what the big 8 are, but in ServSafe, there are 9 listed. I'm going to put this list up now. The big 8 are what most restaurants will recognize on their own, but for ServSafe purposes, they cover some different ones. And these ones are eggs, wheat, fish like bass, flounder, or cod, so like whitefish essentially, crustaceans, so crab, lobster, shrimp, tree nuts, so things like walnuts or pecans, and sesame. Sesame is definitely a big one too. Now, what's not in the book is also things like capsicum, but I could literally I could do a 20-minute video and all I would do is list allergens. That's why I wanted people to comment their own allergens down below, because some of these allergies are extremely rare. Some of them are super common. These 9 that I listed are common. Pretty much the big 8 is in here, but they also add sesame to that list. So first, I'm going to talk about what's important for cooks to know. And the reason why I'm doing this series of videos is because I also wanted to go into detail for consumers to know as well, because consumers were watching that content too. And I wanted to give more information to kind of the average restaurant goer, you know what I'm saying? So for restaurant people, restaurant folk, it is important that you know everything that is in your food, 100%. You know, with this whole mustard seed thing with my wife, we wanted to go to a Cajun restaurant, and they said that we could have the crab boil because all they put in it is Old Bay. Guess what Old Bay has in it? It's mustard. So we're never going to go to that restaurant because we don't know she can have that's safe, because they don't know. So it's really important that you train your staff, everything, at a minimum, train them on the big 9. And if somebody has an allergen, front of house needs to know to communicate that to back of house staff right away, because there may be processes or procedures in place that might expose that food that maybe doesn't have any allergens in it, like whatever, tofu stir fry or something like that. But it might be made in an area where there is, say, shellfish ingredients and stuff like that. And you have to be able to say, hey, I'm sorry, we make too much stuff with seafood. We cannot guarantee your safety. You know, it is that important. You're better off losing business than losing a person inside your restaurant. And guess what? If you have a special sauce that has a special ingredient in it and it's one of these ingredients, disclose it. You're better off disclosing it. A lot of time, and here's the thing, for servers, a lot of times guests will be able to identify and tell you what their allergens are. You're never going to have a guest that comes in with a shellfish allergy going into a Cajun restaurant and not say anything to the staff. A lot of times they won't even go, but I'm just saying, like, if somebody has an allergen, they know to say, hey, by the way, I have a severe allergy to XYZ. And like, okay, thank you for letting me know. They order the menu. Oh, by the way, our gumbo has this ingredient in it, but these other things don't have it in it. You'll actually get a bigger tip too if you know those allergens, because then they feel like you're taking better care of them when you're like, look, I can recommend this and this because neither one of these has this ingredient in it. Also, on the consumer side, don't be afraid to ask if something can be modified in order to accommodate that allergen. For example, I mentioned how the prepackaged Southwest seasoning, taco seasoning, had mustard in it. Well, I know how to make taco seasoning from scratch. As a cook, I have no problem doing that. If you want tacos and we use a prepackaged seasoning, we wouldn't, but I'm just saying if we did, then I would just make a little batch of taco seasoning. We're going to use it anyway. You know, like we would use taco seasoning all the time anyway, so it's not going to bother me to spend like an extra minute or so, you know, throwing a quick taco seasoning together so you can enjoy your tacos with the rest of your family. Something that a lot of kitchen staff might not know about, and something that'll end up being in the test too, is cross contact. Cross contact doesn't just mean tomatoes on the cutting board. It also means what you're putting in the fryer. If you fry a lot of seafood and shrimp and stuff like that in that fryer, they can't order fried food. It's just too much of a risk. Maybe they would be fine, but it's too much of a risk, because maybe not. Maybe they won't be fine. Anytime that you get an allergen notification from a server or whatever, make sure you're double checking everything. And this is no disrespect to the executive chef, but just because they say it doesn't have it in there doesn't mean it doesn't have it in there. There's a lot of things that have soy in it, mustard seed, that kind of stuff, that you wouldn't even think to look for. So just keep that in mind. There's nothing wrong with double checking, right? You're not saying they're wrong. You just want to trust but verify. Make sure you are washing, rinsing, and sanitizing all cooktops, surfaces, utensils, smallwares. Make sure you know where those came from. Don't use old tongs. Use a brand new set of tongs, brand new spatula, clean spot on the grill that you scrubbed, clean cutting board. Maybe a lot of times what restaurants will do is they will actually have dedicated, they look like this, essentially. These are actually designed to be only used with things that you're going to make that don't have any allergens involved. That way you can trust that that cutting board has never had soy on it, has never had shellfish on it, because it is only used for people that have allergens. If you are prepackaging food, we have a grab and go section where I work. And in that grab and go section, we are required to put allergens down at the bottom, including the type of food, because even though certain religious restrictions are not allergens, we treat them as if they were an allergen, because religious beliefs are extremely important to make sure you're respecting. And the last thing you want to do is make something that's got pork in it and they can't have pork as per their religion. And also it's convenient because sometimes people have dietary restrictions or they're not eating meat. And so seeing the chicken or the fish or whatever on the ingredient list is good. But that's just kind of like a if you want to kind of thing. So I hope that cleared up a lot of things about allergens. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments down below. I will read and answer every question. My channel's small enough that I don't get thousands of comments. It's really easy to run through them and see if there are any questions. I hope you were enjoying the Safer Work edition of ServSafe. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to cover as far as ServSafe goes. I'm jumping around in the chapters, so it's not as much follow along with the book. All of this information are things that actually are in the ServSafe Manager edition, but I'm covering them in my own way. And I hope that you are getting some value out of that. But otherwise, you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.